Hey everyone, I'm Chris Lesniak,
And I'm Rob Byer, and this is
the Debate Math Podcast.
Debating Mathy topics and Mathy pedagogy with Mathy people just like you.
Let's get into this month's debate. So let's talk about curriculum resources. Whether you're using a textbook that you chose or your district chose for you, many of you have been asked to use the resource with Fidelity.
But what exactly is Fidelity? And is it a problem to create our own lessons? How much should teachers be expected to use what is included in a curriculum resource?
Well, that sounds like a great question for a debate. So we have a panel of 3 guests today to share their thoughts on the question, should we teach a curriculum with Fidelity?
And let's meet our first guest. First up, here to share her thoughts on teaching a curriculum with Fidelity, we have an educator and grades 5 through math coach who's active with Wisconsin Math Council as co-chair of the conference program committee. She believes the ability to coordinate units is the key to success in middle level math. And we'll talk unit coordination with anyone who will listen. She's even authored a blog series for NCTM about units coordination. She says she's a fish out of water and her happy place is in or near lakes, pools, and oceans. Procrastinator who never learns her lesson because she always gets things done on time. It's Adrienne Burns. Hi, Adrienne.
Hi.
Can you remind our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
I am in De Pere, Wisconsin, which is near Green Bay, and I am currently a 5-8 math coach. It's 2 buildings. We have an intermediate school that's 5-6 and a middle school that's 7-8. So I work with teachers in both of those buildings.
Great. And the question that we ask all of our guests, when did math first become controversial to you?
I think math first became controversial to me in, I believe it was 8th grade. When I was in 7th grade, going into 7th grade, my teachers wanted me to skip 7th grade math and go into 8th grade math. And my mom did not want me missing any content. So I did 7th grade math. And then my 7th grade teachers wanted me to skip 8th grade math and go into algebra. So my mom finally caved and that's what I did. I lasted in algebra for about a quarter. I had some focus issues that people didn't really know about. And I remember it was absolute value where I must have tuned out when they explained what those symbols mean. And I was lost for the rest of the quarter. I hated it. And I got them to put me back into 8th grade math, where I sat at the back of the room in a pre-algebra book, just kind of working at my own pace and doing my own thing. And actually that was one of my favorite math experiences because I like to just be thoughtful about math. I don't like the accelerated pace was definitely not for me. And it just allowed me to kind of be in my own little math world, thinking about things and learning on my own. And it really, I think, has impacted how I, as a parent and as a teacher, think about kind of the math story we author for kids, because not everybody is, quick. And that doesn't mean that they're not good at math. And I think I've seen it as a parent where often I feel like there's this pressure in society that if your kid is doing well, that means we need to push them more. And we feel it like in every subject at school, if they're doing well, then they need to be doing more. In their sport, if they're doing well, they need to be doing more. And it just kind of reminds me like it's okay to do well in grade level math. And it's okay that like the pace we're doing things is working for you. Doesn't mean we need to be pushing you to do more. And then we take a subject that students love and turn it into something that is not enjoyable and overwhelming.
Thank you. I really resonate with the wanting time to think about the problems deeply. That was me too. All right, next up, we have an instructional leader celebrating 16 years in math education. She's worked at every instructional level: classroom teacher, interventionist, instructional coach, and district leader, driving systemic change in how we approach math education. Her mission: ensuring teachers are supported and students actually get math. She's a K-12 Dive Rising Leader and a South by Southwest EDU panelist. She's a strong advocate that student achievement begins with teacher efficacy. It's Phoenicia Hawkins. Hi, Phoenicia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Oh, glad to have you. Can you tell us where you are and what your current role is?
Yes, so I am in the Houston, Texas area, and I am a director of instruction for secondary math.
Awesome. And then the question we ask all of our guests, when did math first become controversial to you?
So math first became controversial to me a few weeks into my very first teaching job. I thought I was going to be teaching science, which was fine with me, because before going into education, I thought I would be a doctor, and life didn't quite work out that way. And so principal said that she needed someone to teach math. Cool, fine. Math and science, STEM was my thing, all throughout school. And in few weeks into teaching, I realized that students were coming with a lot of gaps. And I wasn't ready for that as a brand new teacher. I thought that everyone was going to be on grade level and that we can just teach regular seventh grade math and be okay. And so the controversy came in me trying to understand like what happened in education. How is it so different from when I was in school? Because when I was in school, you did the math, right? You opened up your book to page 12 and you did the odd problems and you didn't talk and you did what your teacher told you. You didn't have any questions. And why the math was is why they said it was. And so I think the next time it came controversial is when I became an instructional coach and actually stepped outside of my classroom. And then I realized everyone doesn't teach like I do. So you're really narrow with your four walls, right? You think that the world in every math classroom is just like yours until you come out and you realize that it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. So I think those will be the two times that math really became controversial for me, and I had to pivot and figure out what am I doing very quickly.
Wow, thank you. And lastly, we have a returning guest for his third debate. He's a high school math teacher since 2005, the co-author of the Math Teacher's Toolbox and Practical Algebra, a self-teaching guide, and the 2022 winner of the Math for America Mueller Award for Professional Influence in Education. The former chair of NCTM's Nominations and Elections Committee, he listens to a lot of audiobooks in his spare time and plans to write novels someday. It's Bobson Wong. Welcome back, Bobson.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me back.
Remind our listeners where you are and what your current role is.
So I teach math at Bayside High School in New York City. I've been doing that since 2000. I've been teaching since 2005, and I've been at Bayside since 2006.
And, when did math first become controversial to you? It could be the first one. It could be the second one. It could be a new one.
So I think math first became controversial to me as a teacher in my first year of teaching. So here I was, brand new, had no idea what teaching math was or teaching anything was like. And at the time, New York City had a mandated curriculum for the integrated course, for the ninth grade integrated math course. And so I was given a textbook, I was given a pacing guide, and I was given a list of aims and the days. And I was told, okay, follow these aims. So the first unit in this book, which is basically the equivalent of Algebra 1. The first unit was statistics. And so the very first day was mean, median, and mode. And I remember looking at this book and trying to write a lesson and wondering, there's a lot of words in here. The kids are going to understand this. And I found, as I went through the unit, that we were all struggling. I mean, I was a new teacher. I was up till 4 a.m. writing lessons. But the students also struggled with this. And looking back on it years afterwards, I realized that they struggled because they're freshmen. Most of them were freshmen in a huge building. They were struggling with just surviving high school. And then they were trying to do a unit that was not really familiar to them because there was so much vocabulary and so much language, and there was just so much for them to process at once. And I couldn't do anything about it because I had to be on aim number 3 on Wednesday. And that just left a very bad taste in my mouth. And for years afterwards, I thought, there has to be a better way of organizing this.
Thank you. And with that, let's get into the debate. We begin with opening statements from each of our speakers. You each have 2 minutes to present your arguments. And we're going to start with Adrienne, sharing her thoughts on the question, should we teach a curriculum with Fidelity? Adrienne, you're up first, and your time begins now.
I claim that the reason Fidelity is a hot button issue is because administrators try to implement curriculum to Fidelity without doing the necessary steps that come before implementation. My warrant is that some districts have been able to implement a curriculum with Fidelity successfully, and teachers see the benefits of it. It begins with a positive school culture in which educators believe in the ability of their students and have a clear vision for math education that fosters positive learning environment where students develop strong mathematical and critical thinking skills. A vision that has been co-created by teachers and administrators that guides all of the math work that they do. With those beliefs in mind, teachers and administrators together can select and implement a curriculum resource that aligns with their vision. If the curriculum aligns with the vision and beliefs of the teachers, the question becomes, why wouldn't you implement it with Fidelity? To me, Fidelity does not mean every activity in the exact time recommended. I don't believe that's the intention of the curriculum writers either. Depending on the length of your math class, the days in your school year, and the students in your classroom, teachers need to adjust their pacing. However, every change to the curricular resource has potential to veer from the vision and lower the bar in a well-intentioned attempt to support students. In the first year of implementation, it is especially important to try the activities as they are written. A new curriculum resource can help to expand a teacher's understanding of math concepts, especially if it is presenting a skill in a way the teacher had not previously seen or thought about. When things get challenging or the school year gets busy, it can be tempting to fall back on what you know and are familiar with. That is why teachers need professional development, support, and discourse around the goals of the activities, lessons, and units. The district's vision and the curriculum that aligns with it should set the bar, and any changes need to be thoughtful and aligned with the district beliefs. When the administration and teachers work as a team with a common vision in mind, it strengthens the math program, guarantees a quality curriculum for all students across classrooms, and moves the district towards its goals.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Phoenicia. Phoenicia, you have 2 minutes, and your time starts now.
So I think about curriculum fidelity, having done this for the last 3 years, implementing high quality instructional materials district-wide. I think first you have to talk about what does the district mean when they say implementing with fidelity. And for the most part, in my experience, what they mean is following the curriculum without any major modifications, because they want to compare like an apples to apples situation for assessments and student growth. I think teachers have no problem with fidelity as long as it's materials that they believe in. And a lot of times it's their own resources, the things that they may have bought online, the things that they've have in their Google Drive for the last 15 or 16 years, like myself. But I think while teachers want to change the world, we are also the most resistant people in the world, in that that's exactly why when a district comes and says that they want curriculum with fidelity, teachers are going to have a huge problem. They're going to push back with that. But I think fidelity alone does not equate to equity. And so I think for me, I get why districts push it. As I said, they want to compare an apples to apples. They want they want students all throughout the district or the organization to all be able to have equal access to curriculum materials. But as I said, I think that the real key for fidelity is going to be the actual teacher. It's not about following the script, but if you're going to use one specific material, one curriculum for your math product, I think what you want to do, similar to what Adrienne was saying, is you want to make sure that your teachers are prepared and that the district has accounted for all of the things that teachers are going to push back on, pacing and time and things like that. Ultimately, teachers, especially math teachers, we want to put our stamp on what we're doing. We want to have a voice. So for me, fidelity is going to be the key. The longer the teachers have been teaching in the content mastery, you're going to see a little bit of wiggle room in what you're teaching.
Thank you. And then lastly, sharing his thoughts on the question, should we teach a curriculum with fidelity? We have Bobson. Bobson, you're up and your time begins now.
All right, thank you. So I am all for giving teachers resources to help them teach. I am all for giving teachers like me the support that we need to help us teach our students in the classroom. What I'm not in favor of are curriculum mandates that require that teachers like me teach with fidelity. This is a big issue in New York City right now where I teach. There is a curriculum mandate that was rolled out this year citywide, with almost 1 million students being required to follow a curriculum with fidelity, meaning that on day 3, you're going to be on aim number 3. And you have to cover everything in this curriculum exactly as is. And teachers are actually being evaluated based on how much of the curriculum is being implemented. Now, the problem that I have with implementing a curriculum with Fidelity is that, first of all, we have standards. We have state standards. We have local district standards. And those are really they're supposed to be the measures of accountability for teachers. And no curriculum that I've seen that I've worked with has really perfectly aligned with those standards because they're not written by people in the district. Teachers need the flexibility to shift things around, to take things out, to put things in, because things come up in the curriculum. No curriculum is perfectly aligned. No curriculum matches the instructional needs of our students. When you have people with different language skills, people with different IEPs, there are so many things so many variables that no curriculum can account for. And I say this as someone who's written a textbook on algebra. I would not want a district to follow my textbook with Fidelity. And so I don't see why we need to adhere to a particular person's vision of a curriculum when we have standards and other accountability measures that can do that better.
Perfect timing. Okay, I want to start actually bouncing with you because you brought up New York City, and I'm just curious. Can you tell us kind of some of the struggles when you try to submit, get a district to do something district wide with Fidelity? What are some of the negatives that come out of that?
We're rolling out a curriculum that's not aligned to our state standards. Now, in New York State, we have a state test that all students in the state are required to pass in order to graduate. And the curriculum that we're using literally excludes topics that are tested on the exam. And so teachers have been pushing back saying, when do we teach this? Teachers have been pushing back saying, when do we get to practice? Because so much of the curriculum that's being implemented is filled with these activities that are great. They're great conversation starters, but they take a lot of time. And the curriculum says, do 10 minutes on this. What do you notice? What do you wonder? I love notice wonder activities, but the activities that are written there are so wordy and so confusing that they're rich, which is great, but they could be focused better. And I feel like the whole curriculum is written by people who were not classroom teachers. And I can look at I've looked at a lot of activities and lessons in this curriculum, and I can just pick one and say, I could write that better with fewer words and still get the point across in half the time. But if I am required to follow this with Fidelity, I'm not allowed to do any of that. Originally the district, the city wanted teachers to follow the curriculum with absolute fidelity. Like on day 16, you're going to be on this AM. And that's crazy. I mean, if you're teaching a class with a lot of English language learners, or if you're teaching, if you're co-teaching a class with kids with a lot of IEPs, then you have to slow down. You have to emphasize different things. You have to try things differently. So the main issue that I have is that no one person or set of people can anticipate all the possible things that can come up in a classroom. And so I would prefer that curricula be used as resources rather than instruments to be followed with fidelity.
I'm going to go to Phoenicia next because you brought up the idea. You said fidelity is not equity in your opening statement. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think of fidelity, though, I think of like everyone's doing the same thing. So how is that not equity? And what's your argument there?
Similar to what Bobson was saying, if student A and student B are both getting the same materials, student B is on an IEP, and the writers of the curriculum didn't plan for everything that student B needs. Now, as a teacher, I have to pivot and switch, really differentiate at multiple levels for what student B needs. And that's what the curricula a lot of times is not prepared for. I think that that's going to be up to the teacher. I think that if you're implementing a curriculum with fidelity, there's degrees to that, in my opinion. And having been in a district where we had 35,000 total students, 7,000 middle school students, I had to go in and make adjustments to the pacing calendar. Having taught sixth, seventh, and eighth grade math for many years, I was able to go in and say, okay, the curriculum company is saying this is going to take 7 days. We can get this done in 3. And so I had the ability, because I was trusted by my superintendent and the leaders to make those decisions. But I also got with our instructional coaches and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And what are we going to need? What are specific students going to need in order to be successful with this? And so with that, while we did curriculum with Fidelity, we also allowed for teacher, I want to say autonomy, but that might not be the right word. Modifications might be the better word. We allow for teacher modifications based on what they need. So, for example, if I'm looking at this activity, I'm like, okay, some of what Bobson said, I think that, they're saying this could take, 45 minutes. We can probably get this done in 10. Or, hey, the do now is 4 questions, or your warm up is 4 questions. We're only going to split this down to 2 because I don't want teachers spending 20 minutes on a do now or warm up. You can get the same, effect in just doing 1 or 2 questions. And so we were able to make some changes. What the expectation was we would stay within the curriculum materials, but we could make it work for us. And so we allowed teachers to put their stamp on it and to allow their personality to come in. Instead of doing the integer lesson in the book, a teacher took it, blew it up, and made a poster out of it and put it in the hallway. So same exact lesson that was in the book, but just modified it a little bit different way so that she could have a voice, and that her kids could get outside of the textbook and not just be sitting in front of the desk all day. So we did allow for modifications. Now, there were brand new teachers who, first year teaching, they didn't know anything else. So they stuck with what they knew. But our more experienced teachers, again, were able to make some of those modifications and get their voice inside the curriculum.
And then I'm going to bring Adrienne into the conversation. So you are a little bit more leaning towards Fidelity than the other two, maybe. And I'd like you to speak more to some of the benefits of using Fidelity. And also, particularly, you brought up like the first year teacher, like Phoenicia just mentioned, like there's some benefits there. So if you want to share your thoughts on the upsides of following Fidelity for a district.
Yeah. And I know I have a hot take in kind of in favor of Fidelity, but and just so we're clear, like what Bobson is describing is not like my vision of Fidelity either. But we went through the curriculum process, getting, updating our curriculum. And really what we found was the curriculum we had was a good curriculum resource, but we had made so many changes over the years and students are struggling with this, so we're going to change this. And so I feel like that experience of me in this role, kind of taking that step back and looking at, what was happening in the different classrooms and, individual teachers changing things and teams of teachers change, like we just kind of kept lowering the bar, watering it down, spoon feeding kids to, help support them. And so we were very, very aware of that when we were then looking at curriculum resources, that we really wanted something that matched what it was we wanted to do. And we really wanted to stick with it and try it. And especially in that first year, we were very rigid and it was hard for teachers because they would look at a lesson and be like, I don't think this is going to land. And it were some of the best lessons, right? So I think sometimes teachers get comfortable with certain things, or like, I've been teaching for a lot of years and I know that this works, but that idea of like, this might work as well, this might work better. How much were we really looking at like the retention, the application, the things we really want students to do with it versus they were passing that test. And I think it has been really helpful for new teachers coming in, right, to have that curriculum resource, to have the teams. Now, there is no district in Wisconsin that is as big as what Bobson is talking about, right? And so, like, when you were talking, Bobson, it really made me wonder, because it's like, as a parent, I have seen like there are kids who kind of snake through the system, either getting like those really high quality teachers or those ones who have changed things and watered it down, right? And that's very different education from parents who are, we're sending our kids to the same school thinking we're getting that same education. And in huge districts like that, I'm not sure how, you would, I don't want to say manage that, but right, like how to know like what changes that teachers are making, right? Are those like I fully trust you to make amazing changes, right? But then how does that spread out to the others? And so that is always a worry of mine as well, that once you start making changes and allowing teachers to make changes, sometimes that just can kind of get away from you, and it's no longer the math program and vision that you had intended and that you wanted. I don't even remember what your original questions were.
That was great. And I actually want to throw back to Bobson real quickly if you want to respond at all. I'm just curious, this idea of like, some Adrienne was saying like some of the teachers thought it wasn't going to be good, but they tried it and it was a good lesson. Like, are teachers not giving enough chance? Like, what if some of the lessons they're skipping over are actually amazing like lessons? Like, should we at least give it more of a try? What's your thoughts on that?
So I totally get what Adrienne is talking about with the resistance to change. I mean, I've been teaching for 20 years, and I'm going to be honest, I'm fairly resistant to change myself in a lot of ways. But I've also recognized over the years that there are some things that just aren't working for me. And so I personally am open to the idea of change. But I know that a lot of people are not for various reasons. It's not that they don't want to change. Their attitude is, well, I've been doing this for a long time and I have pretty good test scores. My kids are graduating fine. Why do I need to change? I mean, I think that gets to something that I think all of us have talked about, which is that you cannot just give teachers a textbook and a pacing calendar and say, okay, go. Right? There has to be PD supporting that. There has to be buy-in from the teachers. And I think the way to get teachers to buy in is to get back to those get back to the standards, get back to the goals. What are you trying to accomplish here? If your goal is just to pass this test, then yes, you may be doing fine. But if your goal is to get these kids to think, if your goal is to get these kids to reason properly, then maybe you're not accomplishing everything that you need to accomplish. And there are ways to measure that accountability. To get to the issue of, what if there's one teacher who's doing one thing and another teacher doing another thing because they're all doing their own curricula. Again, there are ways to measure that by looking at their classrooms. Are they talking? Are they thinking? Are they writing? Like, these are things that are not necessarily tied to a particular curriculum. And so if a teacher is not doing any of that, then the administration, the district has to have a way of saying to the teacher, well, if you're not doing that, why not? Right? And kind of challenge it from the perspective of, if you want to do your own thing, then you need to prove to us that that's somehow meeting the goals that we expect from everyone. So the other thing is that too often, and this is the case in New York City, a boxed curriculum is kind of the shortcut. And in New York City, at least, administrators tend to get the curriculum first and then think about the support afterwards. So New York City bought the curriculum for everyone in New York, for everyone in the district. And now teachers are saying, but we don't know how to use this. And now the district's saying, oh, maybe we should have some more PD on this. Which is like no, you gotta have the conversations first to have teachers understand why you would want to do this. If you give them the book first and then give them the PD afterwards, teachers will not buy in, and then you've wasted all this money. This is what's happening in New York City.
So I want to go to Phoenicia. So Phoenicia, I'm a former executive director of math for Pittsburgh Public Schools, and we had 20,000 kids. You have your 35,000 is what you said. I'm curious, like, how do we address the potential of forcing teachers to teach to the test when emphasizing curriculum fidelity, coming from an administrative standpoint? Because at a district your size, Bobson's size, the size that I was in, every administrator is going to have a different perception on Fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we address that? One, with the administrators, and then two, how does it get down to the level of the teachers so that way we can implement with integrity or fidelity?
So crazy, like I've had all these experiences, right? Because when I went to my former district, when I got there, I started teaching there and I came back as the middle school math specialist. And I remember my director was basically, you're the face of middle school math. You gotta she literally here's the curriculum. You gotta figure this out. We need your help. And so for me, it started with the teacher. I'll get to the admin part in just a second. But for me, I believe when I got there, it was getting ready to be summer, but I went to a campus and I wanted to meet with the teachers because I wanted to hear everything that they felt about this new curriculum, the good, the bad, the indifferent, because I needed to spend my summer trying to work all the nuances of the things. And I knew what I was going to get. I went to the meeting and it was just, we hate this, we hate this. It can take a long walk, go play in traffic. I don't want to do it. And they gave me a list of, but they gave all of that, but they also told me why. And so my thing over the summer was I went through all the feedback. I really dived into the curriculum and I had to take away all their concerns and show them the reason. Okay, you said you hate it because it's not aligned. Let me show you how it is aligned. I had to play both sides. I had to look at where they were coming from as teachers, and I also had to look at it as a district administrator and take away all the worries. And so I think for teachers, that's what we had to do. I had to get in the trenches with them. I did not show up just as the district person. I was with them. I was in PLCs. We were doing trainings. Every month I was coming to PLCs. We made sure that professional learning was conference style. So it wasn't one size fits all. When the teachers came, I think we had them 2 or 3 times, like just as a district, besides individual campus things. And, I got with the coaches and we would offer 4 or 5 different sessions so teachers could pick and choose which one they wanted. When it comes to administrators, you're right. Everyone has a different take on what they want their campus to do because they are the principal. They're the kings and queens of their campus, and what they say goes. Into year 2 in this curriculum, I finally was able to get every district principal, assistant principal, instructional coach, my superintendent, assistant soups, anybody that was over, and we came into one room, and for 7 or 8 hours, we talked about how they can coach the curriculum. In Texas, our evaluation is called T-test. So how administrators can go and observe based on what they see for the curriculum. It was really like a level set for principals and administrators, and it helped them to understand the valuable pieces. It also goes back to, I think a lot of times when teachers are afraid or they're not sure about the math themselves, they will take pieces out. And I wanted to make sure that administrators understood that sometimes the toughest components of the curriculum were the best. And we needed to make sure that our teachers had, learning and training on these specific things so that they were comfortable. Here is my soapbox on efficacy and making sure that teachers understand and that they're comfortable and that they really believe in the curricula and the materials or in themselves, so that can be delivered. But we really had to level set with principals, I think. And it was backwards. If I had to go back and change anything after the curriculum was purchased or, the district made that decision, we need to get with leaders first because we need to get the leaders on board of what this should look like and let them know, hey, we had a high performing campus. The high performing campus, they were doing their own thing, but I think Bob Smarch, I can't remember who said it. They're meeting the mark. So keep doing what you're doing. But again, I think it goes back to, like I was saying, the apples and apples. If there are campuses who are not performing, then we really need to streamline and give every child the opportunity to have, the equal access to the curriculum. But as I said, teachers make the equity part based on them being able to make the modifications for what, every baby needs. But administrators, absolutely, they have to be on board. They have to understand. I had the administrators actually doing the math because I wanted them to understand the rigor of what their kids were getting. And we had parents do it as well. I'll bring parents into, we had parent nights at some of the campuses where the parents were like, what is this new math? Like, I don't understand what my child is doing. But the campus feedback was, now we're having more parent participation because the parents now understand what the investment is. So all three, you got to hit parents, administrators, and teachers and get everybody on board so that we can all be aligned with the goal, which is always going to be student achievement.
I love that because that's exactly our approach that we did. Well, we started with administrators as well, and try to get them to get on board too. So, Adrienne, I'm curious, um, how things are different from from Texas to Wisconsin. I mean, we know that each state is very, very different and takes a different approach. How do you get principals on board? How do you get parents and families on board? Is it similar to what Phoenicia was saying? Do you have any other tips or things that you do?
Yeah, well, I very much connect with that idea of principals need PD, right? Like if they're insisting on fidelity, exactly what, every day what's there, it's because they probably don't know how to get their teachers to do that quality teaching. And that's, kind of their like, we bought this is what you're gonna do. I The particular area where I am is a lot of high achieving schools. So there's like from the admin perspective, like there's a lot of pressure to like be competitive in this area, and all the districts are always kind of trying to one up. So even though we have high achieving schools, it's always, what can we do to keep moving forward, to take those kids who are at grade level and, help them understand it deeper. And um, I think that communication between the teachers and the admin, where I don't remember if it was Phoenicia or Bobson, that like teachers need to feel like they have a voice, right? And so when I think of the word fidelity and doing things to fidelity, it's I mean, we need to be meeting the standards. We have the curriculum resource because it presents things in a way that we think that is going to get the kids to be doing more thinking, doing more application, that transfer learning, the things that maybe teachers aren't as comfortable doing or is harder for teachers to do, but then making sure that the admin, when they're going around to the rooms, they know what they're looking for and they know like what that should look like. And so I do think that just that all invested parties, right, really need to be at that conversation. And I think that's where the fidelity conversations break down, is when people don't feel like they have that voice. And then all you're going to get is, the butting heads and the pushback.
And Bobson, so like I said, I had 20,000 students that were in Pittsburgh. New York City is a much different animal. Like, so how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube based on like what you said? Like how can we in New York City or cities that are that are also very large, if a rollout has already started, how do we help with fidelity, with principals, with admin, like because it's not just principals in districts like your size. There are, maybe 16 people between the principal and the superintendent. How do we get everybody on the same page?
So I think a lot of it has to do with how we view or how we use the curriculum. I'm not opposed to a curriculum. I'm not even opposed to a mandated curriculum. But I think that we need to view it as a resource. If the mindset is, here's a textbook, here's a curriculum, here's a suggested pacing calendar, this curriculum has a whole bunch of activities that you can incorporate into your lessons. That I think is a more helpful mindset, a kind of a way to package this. So instead of this is the book that you must follow, think about it as this is teachers pay teachers in a book. And here's like this whole wealth of resources that you can use. So rather than you sitting there trying to come up with your own problems or trying to come up with some activity where kids are actually talking instead of listening to you because your admin's going to come and say, why aren't the kids talking? Here's a resource that has some of these things ready to go. And you can take these and modify them to put into your classroom so that when people come into your classroom, they're going to be looking for some kind of discussion, some kind of students giving each other feedback, some kind of, so in other words, like when the goal is, I mean, we can think about the goals, getting kids to think more, to talk more, to write more. And here are the resources that we're providing for you as a district. I think that's a more helpful entry point for everyone involved, because then the teachers will say, well, I already have all of that. Then the admin can say, oh, really? So when I come into your classroom, they better be talking, they better be writing, they better be thinking. And if you're not using the resources in the IM curriculum, then what are you doing instead? And that to me is a better starting point, because it treats the teacher as a professional, but it also holds the teacher accountable, because again, the premise is, here's a resource, you can use it, but if you're not using it, you better be using something that's just as good, and you better be able to justify your using that resource instead of the one that we gave you.
I just have a pacing question for the group, and anyone can kind of weigh in. So, because we've talked a lot about pacing, right? And how it's a struggle with Fidelity. I've seen curriculums where like there was one, it was a very traditional curriculum, and they kind of kept that piece there, but then like layered on, like the notice and wonder and the 3-act, they just like put all this stuff in that. I mean, there's absolutely no way you'd be able to do all of that within the course of a school year. But even more reasonably paced curriculum, you want to, some students might need it a little slower. You might need an extra day for something. But that was a big struggle for us, where, and I know other districts too, where if you slow down in this unit because kids need more time here, then you lose things on the back end. So I guess like how do you kind of bridge that to give teachers that space to pace for their students, but also, I mean, make sure that they're getting through the curriculum and not like missing the whole back end of a curriculum.
I can connect to that if that's okay. One of the remember when I told you guys that like when I first got there, the teachers were like, this the biggest thing that they said is we don't have time, like for district assessments, classroom assessments, we don't have time. In Texas, we're 187-day calendar, and so the curriculum company we were using offered 3. I took the 150, and so that gave me 30, almost 40 days to build in extra things. So now I'm getting with the district assessment team. Let me get the calendar for all the district assessments. Let me write those into the pacing. I would also, it's exactly what you said, Adrian. I knew teachers just because I had been in the classroom for 12 or 13 years at that point. I knew that they need time. Like you think this lesson's going to go really well, but you realize, okay, maybe I need an extra day. And so the other thing I would do in the pacing calendar is at least every week, every 2 weeks, if I could, I would put in a day or two where they could do blended learning. So on that blended learning day, you can have a small group to kind of remediate with your students. You can take your kids that are doing really well and go ahead and put them on, a different pathway. And so that was really important for me to give teachers that particular time. So that way they didn't feel rushed, and they didn't feel like if I'm not on, day 2 of this lesson, when day 2 says, when my administrator come in, it's going to be a problem. And I stress that to the principals and to the instructional coaches. Give your teachers some grace. I'm not sure about, Wisconsin and New York, but here we have a large number of teachers who are uncertified, and they don't know what they don't know. And so we had to take that into consideration. Everyone was not in the classroom 10, 12 years. We had some teachers that just literally graduated from college. It might have been working at Target and now they're teaching. So, we had to make sure that in the pacing calendar, we took into account all of those things. And so I made sure that, for example, here's a good one. On the calendar, the curriculum calendar, they wanted to spend a week in 6th grade for financial literacy. Well, in Texas, that's just, did you pay your bills on time, and what happens to your credit report when you don't? I'm not going to put that. I'm not going to tell my teachers, hey, you guys have to spend a week doing this. We're going to do that as a warm up and do now, because that's something that we can teach there. Let's give more time on proportional reasoning. So if proportional reasoning is only, I'm just throwing out a number, it was only 8 days. And we know that, for 6th graders, proportionality is going to be a problem. Let's give them a couple extra days, because on the back end, we took off the week that the curriculum writer said that we need for sixth grade financial literacy. So I think for that, it's getting the experts, and I would recommend teachers, leaders who have taught all three grade levels that can really put their expertise onto what your pacing calendar should look like. But also stress and understand that we need grace and mercy, as adults. And so in the classroom, you need to take into account for that. But I think the biggest thing was giving teachers, like I said, 1 to 2 days as best I could every 2 weeks to just take a day to breathe and regroup with your kids and do small group and, get back on track if you needed that time.
So I just want to throw out a random thought in addition to all of this, which is that I've been kind of thinking more and more over the years that most of the problems in education in this country would be solved if we just taught less stuff. I think that so many of the problems that we face with curriculum, with testing, is that we teach the same stuff over and over, like every year, because the kids didn't learn it the previous year. And as a result, we have to pack more stuff in every year because we have to review from the previous year and the previous year and the previous year before that. And if we just rewrote everything so that we teach a skill once and give kids enough time to actually learn it, then we wouldn't have to revisit it the following year. Now, in order to do that, that's not an issue with the curriculum. That's an issue with the standards. And so that's why I feel like all of these issues come back to looking at everything that we teach, pre-K to 12, and say, how can we restructure this so that we teach everything once and kids have enough time to learn?
Sounds like Bobson wants to rewrite state standards. Go for it. I want to go back over to Adrian here. I have a question. So I work with a lot of school districts all over the country, and some of them want Fidelity, some don't. But there are always those teachers who say that they can do it better, right? Like, despite all the research and thought that went into this wonderful curriculum and the great activities, they just don't want to do any of it or as little as possible because they think they can do it better. So what do you say to teachers like that? How do you work with someone who is so resistant or self-assured?
Well, and I think that is probably where the whole Fidelity debate stems from, right? Is that's, administrators' way of trying to push some of those teachers out of their comfort zone. I would say though, it comes back to the data, right? Like how, if you think this works better, and that's where maybe in a building or within a team, right? One person can teach it using the curriculum resource, you teach it the way you do, and then let's look and let's see how did the kids do, and not just immediately afterwards, right? Like a couple weeks later on an assessment or like that retention piece. Because there are some things that I see in curriculum that are kind of dry, right? And then teachers have like this engaging activity for the students, or it's more active. But then there's also times where maybe that's what the curriculum has, and what the teacher wants is, I wanted them how to do this, and then they will know how to do this. And so I think it comes back to really looking at, it takes some experimentation, right? And it's going to take some time to, sometimes with those teachers, let them do it their way, and then let's compare and let's see how these students are doing. And to Bobson's point, like next year, do they still remember it next year? And I do think that the curriculum is a resource, and it's not the be all end all. But I in my math teaching career, the last curriculum we had was some of the best professional development I had, because that really shifted all of our teachers into more of that conceptual understanding and the group work and the discourse. And if it hadn't been for that curriculum resource, we would probably still be doing a lot more direct instruction and procedures. And it was, us being pushed into that curriculum resource, kicking and screaming some parts of the way, right? Because we didn't understand it. And it took like 3 years for us to be like, oh, I think I finally get this lesson. I see, like, this is really good. I see what it's saying. And so that's part of why I lean towards having some Fidelity, because I have seen for myself how that has helped me grow my math skills and my math understanding. And so I think sometimes you do with those resistant teachers have to, say like, I need you to do this, try it, see how it goes. We'll talk after. And I think the talking after is important, right? If you're going to require them to do something they don't want to do, you have to process with them after. How did that go? How did it work? What, and then you can talk about making some adjustments or making some changes. But if they haven't even tried it, how do they know that what they have is better? So I think just really that open communication, and there are some teachers who need to see other people try it first, right? Like there are teachers who are willing to, they're just going to jump in there's this site. And I was one of those teachers. Oh, I saw this idea. Looks great. I'm going to try it. And other teachers that once they've seen other people doing it and seen that success, then those teachers can kind of say, wow, this worked really great. That's what's going to bring them along. So I think there's just a lot of trial and error and experimenting, but at times you do have to push teachers out of their comfort zone to get them to grow forward in their teaching.
So it's almost like empowering the teachers, but also supporting them with professional learning.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that from all of you. Yeah, I appreciate all of you with your nuanced view on this. Like it's a complicated issue, and we're having a great discussion. I just want to end with one last question for all of you, just to hear kind of your thoughts on like having the teachers be able to have a voice in the curriculum. Like if they're working with a district where there is a mandate or there's a lot of like pressure to like stick with the textbook or stick with the pacing guide or whatever, how do teachers navigate that and still have their own voice or add their own creativity or things that without watering it down? But how do they keep a rich curriculum, have some fidelity, but also get to do their own thing at times? Do you have any advice along those lines?
Yeah, I would say being a district leader, and understanding the need for districts wanting everyone to have, the same curriculum. Again, we talk about the equality versus equity piece. But in that, I would share that one of the best things that I tried to do as the middle school math specialist to make sure that the teachers had a voice and make sure the coaches that I worked with had a voice. Because if we want it to work, that's the only way it's going to work. If you're just standing and you're more, and you have a more, if your leadership is more top down, it's gonna fall apart. I believe in, bottom up leadership where you're really taking into account the stakeholders. Someone talked about that earlier, making sure that your stakeholders are really invested. And so giving your teachers a voice. And I don't mean just asking them for their feedback and then taking it and just not doing anything with it. I'm saying as you're going through the entire process, include your teachers, include your principals, include your APs, because when people feel like, and I even feel when they know that their voice is heard and they know that what they're saying is important to you, they'll do anything that you ask them to do, whether it's difficult or not. The pushback comes when you're just going to tell me what to do and you didn't give me any kind of voice in that. And so if you want your curriculum mandate with Fidelity or with modifications to work, you need to include the people that are going to be in the trenches every day, because while, administrators are doing their administrator thing, it's the teachers that are in the classroom with those 35 kids, that and they're trying to do all the things that they need to do. And so include them and really listen and take in what they say and actually implement that. So as a teacher, I can see my voice in the decisions that are being made.
And I think too, it's hard to teach something that you don't feel like you own, right? And students are going to pick up on that, and that's not going to be quality teaching. And so the teacher does need to be able to put their spin on that lesson, whether, with different teaching routines, right? Maybe you're taking it off of the paper and onto whiteboards, or you're taking, that context and we're going to act it out, or, for, sentence stems for learners for those discussions, and, different language routines to help them. But I think that the teacher does need to look at that lesson and think, how am I going to do this lesson with my students, and be able to put their spin on it. And so that's part of, for me, I think Fidelity is like, you're doing this lesson, but you're doing you. as well, right? Because you can find joy in this lesson, or maybe we're going to do this problem and then we're going to zhuzh it up this way, right? To make it more engaging, or to make it so that, you have that classroom environment that you feel good in and kids can learn it.
So in my ideal world, a district would get together teams of teachers of various levels of experience within the district and have them write the curriculum. Because why go out and find someone else who's not even from the district, who knows the district's students, when we have all this experience right here? And if the district doesn't do that, and if the district just gets a prepackaged curriculum, then what districts should do is to get teams of teachers together to essentially annotate the curriculum by saying, from this lesson, we picked these problems, added this stuff because that's not going to work. Put in this stuff. Oh, you got to emphasize, make sure you say this. In other words, use the expertise of teachers that are using the curriculum and either build your own or annotate someone else's, so that no one should get a textbook and a pacing calendar and say, good luck and Godspeed. Right? That you use the expertise of the people that you have and essentially build on that expertise. And that will also help with the buy-in. That will also help make the curriculum, no matter what form it is, more manageable. Because maybe what you'll get from that is, from this lesson, which has 20 problems, oh, I only need to do these 6. Okay, maybe I can do that. Or these 3 activities, you have to do this one because this one really, really works. This one not going to work because this and this. Oh, okay, that saves me time. I mean, again, anything that you can do to build that sense of community and build that sense of support among teachers, that will help in the buy-in, and that will help any curriculum, no matter what teachers are using.
Thank you for that. And that concludes our questioning round. And we will now end by giving each guest 2 minutes to make their final arguments to you.
And we'll begin first with Adrienne. The floor is yours.
Well, I don't know that I have changed my mind on Fidelity, but I do think that all of us are actually on the same page, even though we have, put ourselves in different rankings of how much Fidelity we believe there should or should not be. I agree with everything that was said. It's such a gray area. And, the more, as I was preparing for today, the more I think about it, I see why teachers don't like Fidelity. I see how admin, use it to force things on teachers that I don't believe creates good teaching, but I've also seen it used to really elevate teaching. And so I think it's really comes back to what we've all said, is it's that communication piece. It's that all stakeholders need to feel like they have a voice. And when we do that, we can, whether we use the word fidelity or, we're just all going to be on the same page and be able to move forward as a district. So I think the curriculum resource is important to really elevate math teaching, because not everyone has the knowledge, and their math experiences are different. So having a resource to support them, I think, is important. But it's the collective group and the knowledge of the group that we need to make sure that we're leveraging.
Thank you. And next we'll hear final thoughts from Phoenicia. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just want to first just, thank everybody for their input and opinions. It's great to hear what other educators think. I think for me, it goes to the word I think of when I think of Fidelity is compliance, but also think of like checking boxes. And those are 2 things that teachers really hate to feel like they're having to do when I just want to go in my classroom and teach. And so I think we all have spoken to if a district is mandating a curriculum or a material resource. I'll go back to ensuring that it's not just a top-down decision, but make sure that stakeholders are invested. Number one, going to be the teachers, ensure their professional learning is ongoing. I believe Bobson said, don't just give them a textbook and a pacing calendar and say, here you go forth and be great. That's not going to work. You need to have professional learning ongoing, monthly, weekly, as much as the teacher's needs. But I also think that, again, I'll go back, to the equity component. If this is what we're doing, the curriculum only gives every student in Wisconsin and New York and Texas. It gives us all equal access to a curriculum, but the teacher is going to be the equity piece, as I keep saying. It's going to be the teacher who is going to have to go through the IEPs, go through the 504s, go through what special services needs, and really learn how to implement this curriculum the way it needs to be done. I'll also say that for teachers who are brand new to our profession, first year teachers, doing the curriculum as scripted, as written, may not necessarily be a bad thing because they're learning. They don't yet know what they don't know. But for your experienced teachers, allow some modification, allow some leeway, allow for their voice and their personality to shine through, because at that point is when you'll win teachers over. If they feel like, okay, I can do this lesson, but at the end, I can take this off because I know my kids won't need this, or I can shorten this, or, if it's 5 days here, let me take only 4 days and do it. Allow teachers to make those decisions using their expertise, because teachers are the experts in the classroom, and we need to build upon that, and we need to ensure that our teachers know that we trust their decisions. And so if you are doing curriculum with Fidelity, just make sure that there is tons of support, and make sure you have someone that believes in the curriculum, but also someone that believes in what teachers can do and can make sure that teacher efficacy is always going to be a voice that's heard.
And with the final word tonight, Bobson, go ahead.
Thank you. As teachers, we need a lot. We need support. We need community. We need more time. We need more space to do all of the things that we need to do. And a curriculum can be a powerful tool to help us do that. But when we're required to follow a curriculum exactly, it prevents us from doing a lot of the things that we need to do to customize our instruction for our students. As teachers, we need resources that we can use to adapt to our students so that we can teach all of our students equitably. Fidelity is something that can be a powerful tool to force compliance. It's something that can be forced. It's something that can take away a lot of the ability of teachers to reach all of our students. And so I think that in the end, we don't just need better curricula. We need better standards. We need better assessment. All of these things need to be looked at simultaneously so that we can help all of our students reach the goals that we want them to reach.
Thank you all. And that concludes this debate. Wow, you've given us tons to think about. You really dug into the nuance here.
And now it's up to our listeners to take a moment and ponder the arguments. And we encourage you to share your thoughts with your colleagues, share with your administration, talk about Fidelity and what it means in your building. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky at Debate Math to share your thoughts on this debate. What do you most agree with and what do you disagree with?
And again, huge thanks to all three of our guests for being here and sharing all your wonderful thoughts. We had so much more agreement than disagreement for sure, but you brought so much nuance to the discussion.
Thanks to all those who are listening. We hope you enjoyed and learned from this debate.
And so, as we wrap up, Adrienne, where can listeners find you?
I am on Blue Sky at A. Burnsy.
And Phoenicia, where can listeners find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me I have a very small presence on X now, not as much as I used to. But both of those are, Hawks Mathemagic, so a play on mathematics, but it's Math of Magic. And also LinkedIn under Phoenicia Hawkins.
And then Bobson, where can listeners find you?
I'm on Blue Sky at bobsonwong.com. I'm still on X at Bobson Wong and Instagram at Bobson Wong, and also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Want to learn more about incorporating debate activities into your math classroom? Go to luzniak.com/podcast to sign up for my mailing list and get your first set of example debate activities you could use with your students today. Go to luzniak.com/podcast.
Don't forget to reach out to us with comments and questions on debatemath.com or follow us on Twitter at Debate Math Pod and follow along with hashtag Debate Math Pod.
Rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts.
Or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback is super important to us.
Well, that's all from us.
Looking forward to debating with you more next episode. Until next time, cheers.